So we've all seen AI that can write, code, and create these incredible images. It's amazing. But what if the real next step isn't just about making them bigger, but making them smarter? Specifically, smarter about how they learn. That's what we're diving into today. This amazing new idea of AI models that can literally teach themselves. Okay, so to get our heads around this, let's use an analogy you'll totally get. Imagine an AI could write its own study notes. Seriously, what if when you give it new info, it doesn't just swallow it whole, but actually acts like a great student? You know, summarizing, making connections, creating its own little cheat sheets to really get it. Yeah, that's a huge difference from how things work right now. And this really nails the problem. Today's AI models, they're like these brilliant students with a perfect photographic memory. But here's the catch. If you want to teach them one new thing, just one tiny fact, they basically have to reread the entire library, the whole thing. It's powerful for sure, but wow, is it inefficient? So let's dig into that core problem. The researchers have a great name for it, the static genius. So what's a static model anyway? Well, it's basically an AI whose knowledge is frozen in time, right after it's been trained. Think about it. To learn anything new, like what happened in the news yesterday or a new programming trick, you have to do this massive, expensive, time-sucking retraining from the ground up. Its knowledge is just stuck. And this is where it gets really interesting, comparing that to how we learn. You and I, we're active learners, right? We don't just download information. We connect the dots, we rearrange things in our heads, we make those mental study notes. But current AI, it's a passive learner. It just takes in data as is, which is why it needs that whole big retraining process just to add something new. Okay, so what if we could flip that script? What if we could change that passive approach entirely? And that brings us to the huge idea behind this research, actually teaching an AI how to learn. The folks behind this, Zweiger and his team, they basically asked this one simple but really powerful question. Can a large language model learn to adapt all by itself? Can it create its own training data, its own learning process? Or, put another way, can it stop being a passive student and start being its own teacher? And their answer is a framework they call SEAL. That's for Self-Adapting Language Model. Now, what's really important to get is that SEAL isn't just another model. It's more like a system, a recipe, that teaches an AI how to make its own training data. They call these little custom data points self-edits, and these are what let the model efficiently update itself with new info. It's a framework for, you guessed it, learning how to learn. Okay, so this is the cool part. How does an AI actually teach itself? Well, it all boils down to this super clever process they call the self-editing loop. So the whole system basically has two parts, two loops working together. You've got this inner loop that's all about applying new information right away, practicing. But then there's this bigger outer loop that has one job, to make the AI better at the process of studying. It's a concept called meta-learning, literally learning how to learn better. And here's how that cycle actually plays out. Let's walk through it. Step 1, the AI gets some new info, like a chapter from a textbook. Step 2, it writes its own study notes. The paper calls them self-edits. This could be a summary, some Q&A, whatever helps it process the info. Step 3, it then does a quick, lightweight fine-tuning on itself, using only those notes it just created. Step 4, quiz time. The AI gets tested on what it just learned. And then step 5, and this is the absolute key, it gets a grade. If it got the answer right, the system rewards it. But it's not just rewarding the answer, it's rewarding the strategy it used to create the study notes. So it learns what study habits actually work. Okay, that all sounds amazing in theory, a self-improving AI. But, the big question is, does it actually work? So let's see how they put SEAL to the test. First up, they threw a really tough challenge at it called few-shot reasoning. The idea was to see if SEAL could figure out how to solve these really complex, abstract puzzles after seeing just a couple of examples. This is super hard for AI. And the results? Whoa, they were seriously dramatic. Just look at this. A standard AI? It scored 0, nothing. An AI that tried to make notes but didn't know how to study effectively, it got 20%. But SEAL, the one that actually learned how to learn, it hit a staggering 72.5% success rate. That is a massive, massive difference. But they didn't stop there. The next test was maybe even harder: knowledge incorporation. Basically, could Seal read a block of text, learn new facts from it, and then remember them later without looking at the text again? This is the real test, right? Can it actually make new knowledge stick? And what happened? Seal got a 47% accuracy score. Now, I know what you're thinking. 47% isn't an A+, but for a task this difficult for an AI, that number is actually a huge deal. And this table really shows you why. The regular model, with no training, was stuck around 33%. Just giving it the text to read barely helped. So then, and this is the wild part, they had a much bigger model, GPT 4.1, create study notes for it. That got the score up to 46.3%. Pretty good. But Seal, the smaller model that taught itself how to make notes, did even better. It hit 47%. Think about that. It learned to be a better student for itself than a more powerful AI could be for it. So, okay, this is obviously a really big deal. A whole new way of thinking about AI. But what does it mean for the future? Where do we go from here with these kinds of learning AIs? Well, one of the biggest reasons this stuff matters so much is something called the data wall. People in the AI world are getting worried because we're running out of high-quality text from the internet to train these models on. Some estimates say we could hit that wall as soon as 2028. And when we run out of human-made data and AI's ability to create its own useful training data, well, that stops being a cool trick and starts being absolutely essential for making any more progress. Now, to be clear, this isn't a magic bullet. The researchers are really open about the hurdles that are still there. For one, there's this thing called catastrophic forgetting, where, kind of like us, learning new stuff can make it forget old stuff. It's also really expensive, computationally speaking. That whole self-grading process takes a ton of power. And finally, how do you get it to learn from stuff that doesn't have an easy answer key or a quiz at the end? But even with those challenges, the potential here is just massive. This quote from the paper really hits it home. Once we run out of data to feed them, all future progress is going to depend on a model's ability to create its own useful learning material. Self-adaptation might be the only way forward. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question, doesn't it? For so long, the name of the game in AI has been go bigger, bigger models, more data. But this research points in a totally different direction. So I'll leave you with this. What if the next giant leap in AI doesn't come from us teaching it more, but from AI finally learning how to teach itself?